So, good evening. Good evening. Yes. So, now to read through this Lojong text. I don't have the transmission of this Lojong collection, not of the all, and neither do I have the collection of this particular Lojong text. So this is just something like reading through and then something like a discussion. So Atisha Dibongara Shirikyana, I think is it 108 teachers, something like this, and then he's out of this then 3 main teachers, right? Chambin Nenjoba, I think Maitri Yogi, and is it Dhammarakshita? Yes. I think also Dhammarakshita, and then Lama Serlingpa, these 3, and then particularly then Lama Serlingpa, through whom Atisha received with instructions on bodhicitta, and I think for something like 12 years, Atisha then studied, and then under his guidance, under Lama Serlingpa's guidance, then it took, I think, about 12 years, right, in order to receive the instructions. So this is not like Lama Serlingpa giving an oral transmission, nothing like that, right? So here, Atisha worked, I think, very hard, very diligently together under the guidance of the teacher, like this, and then we can only imagine Atisha having to go through the various practices, such as like purification, right? Purification practices, then what we call sonam gitso, something like the heap of gathering merits, right? And then like this, right? Like this. So here, gathering merit, this is very important, gathering merit. For these 2 awakening minds, then just having a good theory is simply not enough. Then, yes, theory has its uses. It's definitely good to have that theoretical basis. But then, in order to go from this theory to practice, and then to deepening this understanding, right? Something like to contemplate, to go into this contemplative immersion, right? So for that transformation to take place, then we need something like the support of the merits, support of the merits. So then one can only imagine what Atisha must have done, must have. It's something like a synthesis, coming to that point of experiencing bodhicitta. Then all of these various factors need to be synthesized, right? So through this synthesis of the theory of meditation, of gathering merits, yeah, among many other factors, then I think then this is the meaning, of receiving the pit instruction from the teacher. So this text, personally, I find this very complex. Even though the words are not so many, they're not in. It is not so many verses, but to understand this is quite difficult, and I think it touches on really something like something perhaps very basic, it it touches on a fundamental part of our thinking, which is of course concepts, conceptualization, right? Or to be more specific, false conceptions, right? So this text, it really deals with that, and because it deals with such a fundamental way of our minds, of our thinking, then this is very very deep in that way, So it's not an easy text to like something like to digest or to understand. Then this is quite difficult. So then, as we go through a few lines, then I will try to explain it not necessarily on this very difficult points, but rather, I think personally I like it if something like to find like a common ground or to find a parallel where I find it more easy to apply to myself, right? So I will try to do it like this. Leveling out all conception. The guardian and teacher Serlingpa said to Master Atisha, "Son, to subdue the barbarian borderlands, you will need the following teachings. Level out all false conceptions, carry forth the force of all antidotes, concentrate all aspirations into one, and seek the path where all paths converge. These are the four enlightened factors, the antidotes. They are vital if you are to tame barbarian borderlands. They are essential too in the age of degeneration to bear with misguided ways of negative companions." So false conceptions, this on one level, what we call concept, I think something like there are different way of conceptualization. Like what we were talking yesterday, actually all of our thinking, they're all conceptual, right? They're all conceptual. So remembering past events, thinking about the present, and then sort of planning for the future. All of these things are they are all forms of concepts, right? All forms of concepts, and then something like our, then in relation to the three times, right? Then we have something like memories, and then we have uh, whatever is appearing. Then we apprehend the present uh, world and the things that are contained within, and then in relation to the future, then we make plans, right, etc. So these are like different kinds of conceptualizations, and then attached to these conceptualizations, then some things appear in a pleasant way, others in an unpleasant way, and so forth. And with these conceptualizations, then these emotions also arise. And also, these emotions are also of a conceptual nature as well, right? So, all of these things that are going in our mind on the mental level, most of these are all conceptual in nature, right? So this is one part, and then these false conceptions, right? False conceptions here. This on one level, then this could refer. I think this refers to what we call ignorance. Ignorance, right? So this is the something like the unrealistic uh, apprehension, viewing of reality, of nature, of our world, and so forth, right? So this is that. This is that, right? The false conception in question, and then carry forth the force of all antidotes. So then, how to level these conceptions is, as it is explained in the commentary, then from the very beginning, then to be aware, and then ask in relation to these conceptual thoughts, then what is it that is appearing in our minds, right? What is it that is actually appearing that I am apprehending, right? To ask this, and then to which senses does this object appear to, right? To which senses, right? And then to deal like this, so applying the antidotes in this way, and then what is it that is actually appearing, right? So by analyzing this way, then one is applying the antidotes. The antidotes in in uh, in this process, of leveling out the conceptions, and then concentrate all aspirations into one. So this, in relation to the path, then all of our aspiration, it should be for the purpose of leveling out these false conceptions. So, uh, so this is like maybe on one level, but on another level, then we can understand. We can, for example, apply this to something like on our, on the mental spectrum, right? We have ignorance. We can put ignorance in the middle, and then on the two sides, then it's the feeling of resentment, and then of desire, of attachment, right? So these are something like the two fluctuation points, something like that, right? So then to level out these two fluctuation points, one, we could also apply it on that level, and then carrying forth the force of antidotes. Then what is it that is appearing in a pleasant way, or what is it, or who is it that is appearing in a pleasant way or in an unpleasant way, and then where is this object, right? So asking these questions, analyzing in this way, then we are able to stop these conceptions from its origin, from its source, from the very beginning, and then seek the path where all paths converge. So these are the four enlightened factors. So here, from the commentary, all the sacred scriptures and the treatises of the great vehicle, such as those cited here, assert conceptualization to be a great obstacle to attaining enlightenment. It is crucial, therefore, not to delay, since, as it says here, harboring too many thoughts prevents one from going very far. Do not engage in the proliferation of thoughts, even with respect to the profound truth. Even with respect to the profound truth. This is, I think, also very important, So, what we, in our everyday language, we have something like true and false, right? We have these concepts, and what we see as the truth or as a truth, we are quite certain of that, right? We are quite certain of that, and then you know what happens, right? And then there is sort of grasping and sort of holding onto that, right, as the truth. And then that is, I think, where things can become complicated, right? So then to not engage in the proliferation of thoughts, even with respect, not just the profound truth, but like the conventional truths that we always assert in our daily lives, right? So again, I think we can apply this part like this. And some sutras, it mentions, they describe mental engagements as something like Mara's activity, Mara's activity. So this is very interesting, that way of presenting, In many of our teachings, we would say like this, right? That this way of thinking or these afflictive emotions, mental delusions are in fact Mara's activity, yeah. And Mara is almost presented as something like a spirit or like a god or a demigod or something like that, that's out there, and then sort of driving us and sort of distracting us with all these thoughts, right? So this way, it's one way. It's one way of I think dealing with these emotions. Sometimes I think this way of presenting is good. Then we can sort of like blame everything on Mara. We can say, I'm having all these thoughts because of Mara. Of Mara, right? So Mara gets all the blame. Yeah, but then on another level, then this Mara is not something external. it is within our minds, right? So it's the inner Mara. From the inner Mara, then all of these uh, uh, proliferations of false conceptions, they arise, right? So then to understand this on a different level as our inner Mara's activity. So this, I think, it will be something like the theme, for many of our teachings, of our practices, uh, as 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 we um, as we dive deeper into the various different texts and how they present teachings, and using this kind of I don't know, language or narrative, then uh, it is very clear that it's pointing to the usually with the inner world, with our thoughts, right? So like this. Mentions here. In brief, every time a conceptualization arises, make sure that its antidote arrives there too. So this is, I think, uh, yeah. So every time a conceptualization arises, so here, so like if we feel that feeling of anger is on, like let's say attachment is on the rise, then again applying the antidote, applying the antidote, and also for resentment, if that's rising, if we feel that, then to sort of apply the antidote, to 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 apply the antidote, which is, I think, for example, then something even very simple would be to turn our minds to a different direction. Even something like that does work sometimes, right? We don't need to use some very elaborate technique, but rather just use something like distraction. In distraction, maybe in these situations, are helpful somehow. To try to distract our minds. Yeah. So something like avoiding those objects, the objects of attachment and objects of resentment. Sometimes it's better to avoid, and then once these emotions become less, and then if you were to apply like the real antidotes, then I think it works better, right? Because when we are very much in these moments, then applying the um, applying the antidote might be uh, might be might be maybe, what's the word, not so practical, or it might be, that might be a little too far-fetched. Yes. Or just simply yes, and yes, premature, yes. So then something to sort of like cool off, cool off. Yeah. So even sort of using just the first line, right? Level out false conceptions, carry forth the force of all antidotes, concentrate all aspirations into one, and seek the path where all paths converge. Yeah. So even reminding oneself of these four, I think is very helpful. It's something like, somehow I think these verses are us they're asserting, right? They're quite assertful, assertive. Thank you. They're assertive in that way, and help us uh, direct our minds, right? Direct our minds when we find ourselves a little lost in in this really dense conceptualization. Yes. So for this purpose, adopt the four factors belonging to the class of enlightened phenomena. So this is the as mentioned in the first line. And now the second one, adverse conditions are your spiritual teacher, demons and possessor spirits, the Buddha's emanations. Sickness is a broom for negative karma and defilements, and sufferings are displays of the Dharma Dhatu, ultimate reality's expanse. So this line, I think, is very helpful, right? This is, I think, also quoted in Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, I think, right? So adverse conditions are our spiritual teacher, right? And to view adverse conditions as our spiritual teacher, because from the spiritual teacher we learn so much, and likewise from adverse conditions then we learn so much. Just as by relying on the teacher, we are able to not only understand, but also we are able to then find the tools, or find the path, and then apply them accordingly. Likewise, by something like by virtue of adverse conditions, and they're also able to find the path. And it is actually something like, and also spiritual teacher is the one who reminds us, right, from time to time, when we become forgetful, the teacher of course reminds us. Same thing, adverse conditions also remind us, when we tend to get forgetful, right? So like in this way, if we can view adverse conditions in such way, then I think we are not too negatively affected by these adverse conditions, right? And then on the contrary, then we by coming into contact with the by coming into contact, or by being in a this unpleasant environment, or a difficult situation, then it gives us something like it reminds us of the Dharma, of the Dharma, and it helps us then to sort of orient, towards the Dharma, to look towards the Dharma, right? So this is very, very important, because adverse conditions, this we can always find. Spiritual teacher is little, I think, difficult to find, You always have to look for a spiritual teacher, right? But adverse conditions, you don't have to look for You don't have to look for this, and so it's always it. In fact, it looks for us. I think adverse conditions. They're always looking for us. Always trying to follow us. So then, if we can use adverse conditions, then we always have, use it as a tool. Then we always have that tool uh, on at least on standby, right? So then this is good. And then demons and possessor spirits, the Buddha's emanations. So then here we can also think, of course, as like external demons and possessor spirits, and then internally, of course, then these what we call mental delusions. Yeah, so these are the demons and spirits, and they are Buddha's emanations, right? So to look at demons and possessor spirits as Buddha's emanations, and then sickness is a broom for negative karma and defilements. Because by experiencing sickness is just an example. This can it's just an example, right? But this would also include any other effects of negative karma and defilements, right? So as we experience them, then in a way, our negative karma and our defilements are sort of becoming less in a way, right? Because now we have experienced that already. So they are now, it's like they have already been used, right? Their potential has their potential has already been realized, something like that, in the form of sickness, right? So in a way, then sickness is a broom for negative karma and defilements. Defilements, defilements. So we have negative karma, and then defilements, and defilements would what does this refer to? Negative karma and defilements. So defilements meaning like maybe afflictive emotions, clashes, maybe. Okay. And sufferings are displays of the Dharma Dhatu. So ultimate reality just expands. Dharma Dhatu. 동해 춘익이 요랑이ens. Yes, displays. So something like an illusion of Dharma Dhatu. And of course, sufferings they come, right? Sufferings arise from Dharma Dhatu, right? Dharma Dhatu. What is the word in Chinese for Dharma Dhatu? Or, excuse me? Oh, Dharma Dhatu. Dharma. We don't have this word in the Heart Sutra. We don't have that. But Dharma Dhatu is, I think it's also a synonym of emptiness, right? So, like Shunyata or Kongsin. This is Shunyata, right? Shunyata, okay. Dharma. So, Dharma is Pova. Facie. This is Dharma Dhatu. Facie. Okay. And what does Che mean? Ah, okay. Oh, okay, okay. Yes. Yes, very nice. Dharma Tatu. Yes. I see that there's already a lively discussion going. So this is very nice. It's all because of Dharma Tatu. Yes. So this is displays of the Dharma Tatu. Yeah. Very nice. Hmm. When harms from ghosts, ogresses, side spirits, and so on befall you, place upon these with your entire heart whatever harms and sufferings sentient beings are undergoing, thinking, I have definitely taken these. Cultivate a sense of joy by giving to the agents of harm whatever they desire, such as the flesh, blood, and so on of your body, out of compassion, out of loving kindness, and out of the awakening mind. The harms are turned into factors conducive to attaining enlightenment and therefore assist your journey to enlightenment. Given that all these malevolent forces are emanations of the Buddhas, you should cultivate inconceivable joy and respect toward them. Okay. Yeah. So this is very clear. Humans and ancestral spirits are Buddha's emanations. Why why it would be good to see them as Buddha's emanations, right? So the reason is very clear. When you are suffering, I'm reading this. When you are suffering from an illness, take all the sickness and pains of sentient beings into the very core of your heart and imagine that all sentient beings attain perfect abandonment, thinking this has served its purpose. Cultivate joy when you are free of sickness, again motivated thus. Give to sentient beings all your happiness and its causes, and imagine that all sentient beings attain perfect realization, thinking this has served its purpose. Cultivate joy. This sweeps away negative karma and the obscurations, for it does not allow negative karma and obscurations to linger unchallenged for even a single moment. If 100 sufferings arise, 100 ways to search for their true nature will emerge. However, given that these sufferings never truly existed, there are 100 different ways to not find them. Well, if we cannot find them, then why are there 100 different ways of not finding them? Because you can't find them, right? Very interesting. Just like a sidetrack, with the emptiness, it cannot be known like from a positive side, but by way of negating possibilities, right? That one then comes to the right understanding of emptiness. And so usually we are like analyzing like what am I, right? Like who am I? Where is this me when we are looking? Is it my form aggregate, or is it my feeling, and so forth? And we search, you know, uh, uh, we search through the five aggregates, and then we do not find me, right? We do not find I. So one looks for this I and then ends up not finding it. And when you do not find it using these methods, right? Then at a certain point, it is said that you realize emptiness. But then the question is, if that's how we realize emptiness, then since there was nothing to find, right, from the very beginning, then we haven't found it. We haven't found this truly existing object, right? Then does that mean we have realized emptiness from the very start? No, right? Yes. That's like spoiler alert. Yeah. No. Yes. Yes. But then what's the difference? If I may use this, maybe this example is helpful, but maybe to understand this example, maybe then it's good if you have seen this movie called Kung Fu Panda. Is that right? Kung Fu Panda. So the panda, he has to look for these secret instructions, and he goes through all the trials and tribulations, and in the end, finally finds the scroll, and then, looks at it, and there's nothing there, right? And then there's that moment when the panda realizes emptiness. Yes, yes. So I think it's like this. Even though the panda didn't find anything from the very start, but the panda didn't go through all 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 those possibilities. So one needs to cancel all the various hypothetical possibilities. And once you have canceled out, with a certain degree of I think conviction, and then and then finally when you come to that point, of not finding anything there anymore, right? Then it's something like this, and that movie, this I'm sure it has to do with with how to realize emptiness. It's very clear. I think this is very clear. So if you haven't watched that movie, maybe it might be good. Kung Fu Panda, right? Kung Fu Panda. The first one. Yeah. Not the second or third, or there might be a fourth or fifth. I don't know. I think there were a few, but this is the first one. Yeah. And then this training is a great counterbalance to happiness and a great successor to misery. It is a charm that attracts misfortune and a wish capping the useless ones. So to here the commentary explains the meaning of these lines is as follows. to harbor modest desires and cultivate contentment to counteract the longing for pleasures, and so like something like the worldly dharmas, because uh, because sort of chasing after the worldly pleasures will naturally obstruct the pursuit of virtuous activities. Similarly, follow up sufferings with additional pain. If your leg hurts, go for circumambulation. If your back hurts, do prostrations. If you suffer too much greed, give things away to others. If you suffer distractions, enter into retreat. And if you delight in gossip, cease speaking. So it explains like this. When you suffer great unwanted omens, such as a bad reputation, disputes, magical spells, and malicious gossip, since these are means for subduing the malevolent demon of self-grasping, welcome them as auspicious. This is, I think, very powerful, very powerful. So something like, if when like, instead of fame, but like disrepute, if we experience that, then this is really like a wonderful gift, then to use that for subduing the demon of self-grasping. As you might use a charm to attract good fortune, cultivate courage by shouting, "Send me more," with the thought, all these events befalling me, events that are normally of no benefit, if I can use them to subdue this self, from here on, I will not be reborn in cyclic existence. In this manner, you cap your desires and ensure that you achieve the strength of the three aspects of forbearance. Forbearance. So the first is the forbearance of being perturbed by harms, right? So by not being negatively affected by harm. So this is the first forbearance, and then the second one is then it's the forbearance of voluntarily taking the suffering, voluntarily taking suffering of others, I think, and also of oneself. Yeah. So this is the second, and then the third is 출렁의 심기쇠바. So the forbearance of like reflecting on the Dharma, So this third one, I think the meaning is something like when we reflect on the Dharma, then in a way we are practicing forbearance, because now we are sort of dealing with our laziness. Is that right? Dealing with laziness, we have sort of this forbearance, also translated as patience, right? Patience. Are there any other terms used? Tolerance. Okay, tolerance. Maybe it's something like people have questions like, if I'm being abused, then I just practice patience and do nothing about it, right? This question many times. I think also during the second time, second evening before, I think there was something like this. Yeah, kind of dilemma, ethical of ethical nature. Actually, being patient, it's not about not taking any actions and simply sort of, if one's being abused, it's not about just simply sitting there and then let and go through take and then let the other person abuse oneself like continuously. I don't think that is the point of practicing patience, right? Patience is really the Tibetan word söpa, söpa, söpa. So sö is something like that. It's maybe like colloquially I can say to handle the abuse. No? That this is what practicing patience is. It's like the first type of forbearance, right? Of remaining unperturbed by harm. This is exactly just that, to remaining unaffected, not uh, uh, reacting negatively. So if one is able to do that, then this is one is practicing patience. It doesn't mean you simply that one simply just remains there and then lets the other lets this abuse continue. And sometimes I think people who ask these kind of questions, they face this abuse not just once or twice, but really like on a regular basis. Yeah. Then this kind of questions come up. When this kind of questions come up, then we have to be very careful in how we understand patients. So so do not sort of like misconceptualize or misunderstand what it means to um, to being patient. So patient really means not sort of not reacting in a negative way. This is very important. As long as one is able to not react negatively to abuse, then one is practicing patience. Yeah? And then one can go ahead with also to sort of uh, look at ways of perhaps stopping this abuse. This is important because if you let the other person abuse, then in a way one is not taking really full responsibility in looking out for others, right? Because you are now not doing anything. You are simply just sort of like witnessing this person engage in this negative action and then doing nothing about it, right? So if this is of course another way of someone who is practicing, for example, right? This tradition, like the Bodhisattva, if one is practicing great compassion, then one cannot sort of like tolerate the other person uh, committing this mistake again and again, repeatedly. So then one needs to find the skillful means in how to change the behavior of this uh, negative action of this person who is engaging in this negative action. So like that. And then the next line, self is the root of negative karma. It is to be discarded decisively. Other is a source of enlightenment. It is to be embraced enthusiastically. So self is the root of negative karma. So maybe this self is referring to the self-cherishing mind or the self-centered attitude, right? Self-centeredness. Yeah? Self-centeredness. Because I think somehow this word self-cherishing we have to be careful how we use this term self-cherishing. Because in many texts, when they are translated, then they're using this term, self-cherishing, and then the line might be something like abandon self-cherishing, or self-cherishing is the root of all negative karma, something like this. And then this might like open the doors for some misconceptions to arise, right? Then people sometimes, I think, they get this idea. Well, if self-cherishing, then they take it, I think, very literally, and then they think, okay, self-cherishing is bad. I shouldn't cherish myself. Then someone might go in this direction, right? And then uh, some problems there will be problems, right, down the road. So in this way, then we have to sort of define maybe more clearly, yeah, as to what self-cherishing here is referring to, right? So this is definitely like self-centered, right? This self-centered, I think somehow self-centered is like a safer term. I think with self-centered attitude, you wouldn't have these problems. Whereas with self-cherishing, I think then some might get the idea that one should not cherish oneself. But then, of course, being safe, kind of things, when we are thinking on something like a beginner's level, but then, but 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 when the practitioner has achieved a certain level, a certain point, then I think the practitioner, then there is no more of this self-cherishing, then this self-cherishing, then it transforms into other cherishing, right? So then it's really other cherishing, which would then lead, or which would then uh, propel the practitioner onto the path, right? So again, we have to be again mindful of that, right? Because when we look at the sutras, like when also something like the Jataka tales, then it seems that this bodhisattva who is engaging has really not a single thought of self-concern. It's very clear, So then it shows that there is a certain point where one can make that jump, from having some sort of concern for one's well-being, then to just having concern for the well-being of others, right? So we are having made the previous statements, but at the same time, I think it's important that we do not completely reject it, on the grounds that we are not thinking on this level. This is again, I think, quite dangerous. We cannot reject something that is mentioned in the sutras because it doesn't apply to me. Then this is again, it's not a holistic approach, you know. So we always have to sort of juggle between these 2 points, right? Between these 2 points. So in a way, I find that yes, we the faith to the sutra remains there, because when we make all this kind of interpretations, my way, this is my thinking, sometimes I feel that there is a certain egotistical. There is a level of ego, or there is that, you know, somehow it is appearing, you know. So this is, I think, very interesting. So then how to again go with faith in the Buddha's words, in his teachings, and then analyzing for ourselves. So this needs to be done with the, you know, imbalance, right? If we go too much on just the faith and no sort of like analyzing for ourselves without pushing much like careful thought, if we do not carefully think about this and simply just sort of like I mean, faith is very important, but if we just simply use our faith as an excuse for not engaging in like deeper contemplation, you know, or analyzing, right? Or studying, for example, studying the sutras, then this is then something like a wasted opportunity, because we have this right now we have this wonderful opportunity of not only studying but contemplating, right? And then meditating and so forth. So one needs to really sort of make use of all the faculties, right? The five, is it something like the 5 powers? Is it the 5 powers? Teba, Zunju, Temba, Dinginzin, Sherab. So Teba is faith, I think. Teba. Zunju is like diligence or perseverance, right? Teba, Zunju, Temba is maybe like memory or mindfulness, right? Teba, Zunju, Temba. Dinginzin is single-pointed concentration, and then of course wisdom, right? So these 5 powers. Teso wangbonga, yes, wangbonga, senses, maybe senses, yes. I think senses, yes. In the Abhidharma, it states, right? It states this in the Abhidharma. So this is something that we must make use of, right? Make use of all equally. Okay, and then the final verse, cast away decisively, let go with ease, dismantle thoroughly, and let be with gentleness. These are the 4 aspects of the sealing of emptiness. They are vital if you are to tame the barbarian borderlands. They are essential too in age of degeneration, to bear up amid the misguided ways of negative companions. If you engage in the practices in this way, beings will not be fettered, but will attain freedom. So to cast away any sort of lingering thoughts, any kind of regrets, to cast that away and letting go with ease, and then not and then to make sure that that has been handled thoroughly, and then let be gentleness. Right? So these four aspects are like way of sealing emptiness, or something like bringing closure. I think bringing closure. This is very important in every type of, I think, leveling out conceptions. In every instances of overcoming an emotion, then these four, I think, really bring closure. Closure to the whole process. And then here in the commentary, it mentions, decisively cast away all dualistic thoughts of perceived objects and perceiving cognition, and let your mind rest free and radiant, absent of conceptualization and bondage in the ultimate expanse that is free of conceptual elaboration. Do not chase after earlier instant of cognition. Do not anticipate the future, but free of clinging, let the present remain as it is. Let it rest free in its natural state, uncontrived and free of any exaggeration or denigration. So this way of sort of emptying our minds of these conceptual false conceptions, this is I don't think it's unique to any one tradition, but even like from the Theravadan tradition, I believe this practice exists, and of course in the Mahayana tradition and also in the Vajrayana tradition, then this exists, in all these different traditions of not, for example, like not anticipating the future, and then not to chase after the earlier instance of cognition and so forth, right? But being in the moment, let the present remain as it is. This meditation, this is, I think, crucial in freeing the mind of all conceptualization. So, like this. So, of course, here, cast away decisively was in the was explained in the context of casting away dualistic thoughts, of just going beyond dualism, right? So this is very high level, but we can, of course, to practice with that, then we can first practice with something like our desires, and then our resentments, things like those. These emotions that are very clear to us, that feel very, I think, alive. Whereas with these dualistic thoughts, then sometimes it's difficult. It's more difficult when we think of, like, at least like overcoming dualism, this is not an easy task, right? This takes, I think, many. Uh, uh, this take quite, I think, much training, right? So like this. Uncontrived and free of any exaggeration or denigration. And then it mentions the Amoka Pasha Tantra states wisdom refers to enlightenment, while hero indicates skillful means. With these two, the welfare of sentient beings will be achieved. Again, the Guya Samaja Tantra entitled Drop of Freedom states with, with compassion as the sole basis, all enlightened qualities will arise. Again, if the root of compassion is absent, one cannot endure hardships. If the root of compassion is absent, one cannot endure hardships. The sutra entitled Perfectly Gathering the Qualities states, whosoever aspires to attain full enlightenment swiftly should not train in many practices. What is that sole practice? It is great compassion. For whosoever possesses great compassion possesses in his palms all the teachings of the Buddha. He will achieve these without effort and without exertion. In brief, great compassion is the root of all the teachings. For whoever possesses great compassion possesses in one's palms all the teachings of the Buddha. One will achieve these without effort and without exertion. In brief, great compassion is the root of all the teachings. So now maybe we can have some interaction.
There's this stanza here that is additional, not just here. Yeah, I think that you only mentioned up to here.
Oh, I read only. Did I miss this?
I don't seem to hear it because I find personally the second line in this stanza is extremely important in today's world. There with a misguided ways.
Oh, okay. Okay, so just before the yes, they are essential to. This is the final verse, right? They are essential too in the age of degeneration to bear up amid the misguided ways of negative companions, to bear up amid the misguided ways of negative companions. If you engage in the practices in this way, beings will not be fettered, but will attain freedom. These misguided ways, this is very important. So maybe here I can talk a little bit of what we call like guru devotion. Guru devotion. I had this discussion before, and before that also, and a few times before. So this is a very important point because I don't know about how much guru devotion is stressed. Is stressed. For example, like in the Mahayana tradition or in the Theravadan tradition. So I'm not very familiar, but at least in the Vajrayana tradition, there seems to be quite a great deal of emphasis, on this part, right? On the part of guru devotion. And as you all know, during the last few years, perhaps even few decades, we have had stories and scandals, things like that, that have to do with the subject of the guru devotion, or perhaps, to be more accurate, between the relationship of the so-called guru and the so-called disciple, right? So on this, then these days, because I think maybe it has to do with how we live, it might be that how we live, because nowadays I remember one of my teachers telling, in Tibet, one day was so long, a day was so long, and you could do so many things in one day. But nowadays, the day seems very short, that a day seems very short, right? So this is, of course, the Guru was speaking in India. Now, imagine here in Singapore, the day would be even shorter, right? Yeah? Yes. So in these environments, then maybe it's also that acts as a background where then people don't have so much time, so whatever they need to do, they have to do it in the shortest time possible, right? So like this, then you all know the stories of the lamas coming and then giving teachings, and then somehow starting this relationship, one as a guru and one as a disciple, and then some issues come up, right? And then this becomes quite well known in our society, right? So with this, then we have to be, I think, very careful. We have to be very careful. Ideally, as we start from the very beginning, it is better not to go so deep into the guru devotion part, I feel, because uh, Guru devotion, it can be, I think, it can be practiced on different levels. It need not be as explained in, for example, like in the 50 verses. It does not need to be exactly, verse by verse as mentioned in the 50 verses. Is that right? 50 verses, right? 50 stanzas, thank you. 50 stanzas. So it need not be like that, right? For a beginner, then first, not even as a teacher, but something like a friend, to begin like this, I think it is very good. To view the Lama as a friend, as a spiritual friend, something like this, I think is appropriate, is, I think, what we need. And if you do it like this, then I think this really goes well with the part. I don't remember exact in which text it mentions, but there is this. I think it mentions that actually in many texts on Guru devotion, it talks about where both the prospective teacher and the prospective disciple need to examine each other, each other. So, so, so by first having this kind of a relationship as a spiritual friend, so this gives uh, that opportunity where both these two groups can then examine each other, the prospective teacher and the prospective student. So like this. This is it something like for 12 years? I think it even mentions something like that.
First you observe for 12 years
Uh-huh.
to accept as a teacher.
Right. 12 years.
And then for Vajrayana,
Uh-huh.
another 12 years
Oh.
for the teacher to then observe whether you are qualified
Mm.
after you have taken him as a teacher to learn his Dharma, the language. So all in 24 years.
24.
Some say that.
Yes. This is, I think, for maybe the prospective student is very young. Is very young. Then this is good. Yes, it's very good, right? But yes, 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 yes. But of course, for certain prospective students, I think we need to expedite. We need to expedite. Definitely, yes, yes.
Lama Atisha observed Lama Serlingpa after arriving in Java for 7 years before approaching Lama Serlingpa to request teachings. Even though he has already heard of his reputations and his achievements. But he wanted to make sure that, yes, Lama Serlingpa was his teacher.
Yes.
And Lord.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. So, to examine this prospective teacher is very important. This is one point. And then if again there's this other point where even let us say that one has more or less accepted has accepted a teacher, let us say, right? But then is one obliged to do exactly as the Guru says? I don't think so. Again, we can, because in the sutra, I think this is what is Vinaya Sutra. it mentions that if the guru, if the teacher, the guru says something that does not accord with the Dharma, then you have the option of not accepting it. This meant it is mentioned very clearly, right? So again, we as students, we have our rights. This is very important, right? To know the rights of as a student is very important, because sometimes I feel people are not explained something like the terms and conditions and the rights and so forth, and then they get introduced to this very high yoga tantric empowerments, rituals, and so forth, and then they're like almost like coerced or like sucked into this system. And many of these like naive people, they first, I think there's really like that pride. Oh, I'm the disciple of such and such Rinpoche. They feel this almost like they almost seem prideful of that, which to me seems somewhat silly, I mean, why uh, have this? Why have why why do you have to feel like that, right? So then I think like this, to not hurry, to not hurry. And I think something also important is sometimes we may have like it's a good impression of someone. Then we have to be careful. Yeah. We cannot simply act out of just one good impression. If we do that, then these problems may arise, right? So this is why I think getting to know the prospective teacher as a person, I think is really important, as a person. So that would require one to meet over a few years and then spend some time together, preferably, and then also always like asking around. And this is where like the reputation part comes, right? So if there is like no unpleasant words about the prospective teacher, then this is like a good base, right? But again, just because someone doesn't have a bad reputation is, of course, that doesn't mean that is your guru, right? The guru needs to inspire, right? To truly inspire. This is, I think, very important. And then with the guru, another thing is attachment to the guru. This I find we have to be very clear to not become attached to the guru. Yeah, this is, I think, very important. Yes, we have to rely on the teacher when we start out. As a beginner, yes, we have to rely on a teacher, right? But after many years of studying and getting some proficiency, yes, reaching some, gaining some proficiency in the Dharma and knowing how to practice all of this, then something like, yes, to remember the kindness of the teacher is so important, but the attachment part, one has to learn how to deal with that. That is, I think, very important, because if you're not careful, then something like the teacher might become like a substitute of our mother or our father, because of mommy daddy issues, you know. Then this is, again, I think, not very productive. In fact, counterproductive, because of how we view our teachers. If we see the elderly guru, if something like our father or like our mother, then if we are not careful, then if this attachment becomes strong, then I don't know how far one will be able to go, right? How far? Then I don't know how far reaching the practice, or how far reaching this guru disciple relationship would be, because with attachment, I think attachment has a way of holding one back, from making true progress, right? Attachment really does that. It really holds one back from moving forward, right? Literally. So again, to be mindful of that, to sort of make it clear in our mind that Thayar Rinpoche once mentioned in one of the teachings about the conventional guru and the ultimate guru, So this is so important, Yes, very important to understand this, the conventional guru and then the ultimate guru, right? And the ultimate guru, if we can see the ultimate guru, then this attachment will naturally subside, right? Subside?
Yes.
Okay. So that is and so thank you. And was there some question, something? Yes, please.
Good evening, Rinpoche. Thank you for wonderful teachings. Can you share with us the book that you're reading from?
Oh, this one. Yes. So
Can you read down the name so that maybe
yes.
upstairs can hear?
Essential Mind Training. This is part of the Tibetan Classics, which is an initiative taken by Thubten Jimba. And this particular book is also translated by Thubten Jimba. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Essential Mind Training. Essential Mind Training.
Any questions?
Thank you for that very important clarification on Guru devotion, Rinpoche. But beyond that, today in our samsaric life, what is even more urgent is that we are misguided constantly by propaganda, by social norms, expectations, environmental expectations, especially in workplaces, in organizations that you're in. And you are sucked in with a romantic idea or a noble idea, but yet people who are there want things their way. And then avoid having you succeed with those noble intentions by giving you many misguided ways of how things has been. In the news today, in our social fabric today, globally, we hear propaganda. And how much of it is misguided? It is definitely guided. And how many of these people, these propagators of concepts, propagandistic concepts, are positive or negative? And how do we survive these environments clearly?
Yes, yes. So, for example, when we see this kind of commercials, right? That's what commercials are doing, right? They're trying to sell something, sell this dream. So that, for instance, then of course I think we have to deal with that. We have to deal with that. First thing, mindfulness. We have to be mindful, right? Again, if we find ourselves being distracted by what's being presented on social media, what's being shown on the screen, then I think mindfulness is really key. Applying mindfulness is I think very important. And then somehow in this world we live in, yes, we are sometimes swayed by waves coming this way or coming that way, etc. And then people also seem to be on these waves, They are being carried away by these waves of information and distractions. So then how do we deal with that, right? And this is, I think, first of all, first thing is to realize that that we are being subjected with an intention, right? That we are being exposed to these things. There is something like there is an actor behind the scene, right? Or there, think of it like what we see is like the projection, right? And then there is the projectionist behind the projection. So even simply looking at it this way, I think helps us deal with the situation, not sort of taking that as a truth, or not sort of being overcome by sort of being overwhelmed, not overcome, but this would help us not become overwhelmed by these waves of distraction, right? So the first thing is to realize that that there is the projectionist behind all of this, all these projections, and then sometimes it is also good to sort of ride the waves, and then at one point stop and then ask oneself, now what has happened, right? Now that I have gone with this way of thinking, what has happened to me, right? And did it make me any more happier? Yeah? Am I satisfied? Because, for example, that's I think what the commercials are doing, right? They are trying to sell you a product, and then it is really about, I guess, just being happy and being content. It's like if you don't buy what they are selling, then something is missing in your life. That's more or less the message, right? So then by processing it thus, then maybe it will help us. It will help us in dealing with these misguided ways. Yes. So something like that, I think. So in short, just like the great teacher the Buddha says, applying mindfulness. That teaching, like when as I'm walking, then I should apply mindfulness, like beginning with I'm walking now, and then being mindful of my surroundings, right? This is really so precious, that approach. It's so relevant, so like this, I think. Because if we don't apply mindfulness, then it's so easy to be distracted, so easy, or then we can easily become distracted. And then one distraction leads to another, and then it's like this never-ending cycle of distractions, right? So then how to stop this cycle? Then it is first by realizing and then applying the antidotes, as mentioned here. Carry forth the force of all antidotes, concentrate all aspirations into one, and seek the path where all paths converge, right? So I think something like this, Yes?
Yes, thank you, Rinpoche. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, I'm very lucky, I think, sitting here to have the chance to listening to Rinpoche's teaching. Just now you said it's very dangerous, the first time impression, but all based on that for me to meet you here. But later, all the confidence comes from your teaching, especially these 2 days. And you taught us all very important, crucial for us to practice the Buddha. Yesterday, we learned impermanent. It's very important. It's wisdom. And in the darkness of the ignorance, we all take things permanent. So we chase after the things, material things, also the concept. So that is the root of the suffering. And when we take things in the permanent view, and then we can make things less attachment. And we know all things is interdependent. That depends on the condition. And the condition changing and the environment changing and also the result is changing. So nothing is permanent. So in that way, we less attach things and then we pay more about the condition. So this is very important for us to deal with our daily life, also the practice. And then you taught us the cause and effect. Also, it's very important, and I think it's the basic of Buddhism. Yeah, especially people with a lot of difficulties or some dilemma. But if we have this view, and then we can face the result, and then we know it depends on the condition. And then if we don't want this result, then we just change the condition. We just or wait for the condition. So it should be the way. And also, when we face something and we are in dilemma, we don't know whether we adopt it or abandon, and we just think about the result. I will face that. That is what I want. And then if I don't, then do not do it. Or if you want the result and then it's good, okay, just do it. So we are not in dilemma. That is the responsibility. It's very important. And also today we learned the bodhicitta. Yeah, we know we need to use the antidotes. Yeah. And also, we need to give up the discrimination about what is good or not. And the sickness is the broom of, the karma and the evil or something like that. So, in this view, I think it's a guide for us to further practice. Especially the last part, it makes it very clear that we must pay attention to the relation with our guru. Yeah, we cannot take our guru as as a mother or father, and then we pay less to the dharma. We just very take the relation very important and pay more attention about that. It's very dangerous. This is very, I think it's very serious things in some of the society, the Buddha society. Then they maybe they don't take the Dharma and just it's my guru or it's others, and they refuse to listen to others. So that is it's not. I think it's a kind of it's not good. So these 2 days I gain a lot. Yeah, I obtain many teachings from you. So I pay my great respect to you. I hope I can have a chance to listen to you all the time. Thank you, Rinpoche.
Dashi Deli Rinpoche, thank you for your precious good, holy teaching. Actually, I would just like to ask you, how can oneself be happy? Because sometimes we felt very lost or miserable or hopeless sometimes from what we do. Yeah. Thank you.
One way of, I think, being happy, being content, is realizing that true happiness does not come from material gain, right? So, of course, realizing that is not so easy, right? But I guess something like that, constantly reminding that if one searches for happiness out there, then it will be just that, then one will only find external happiness, right? Not real happiness, not true happiness, no happiness within one's mind. So as long as we are able to, I think, remind ourselves of that fact, then uh, despite despite all the challenging circumstances, adverse conditions that we find ourselves in, I think we won't be uh, swayed so much, from at least I feel that perhaps we may not like fall into like the abyss of something like, let us say, depression. I think the last few years for many people around for around the whole world, I think this pandemic, uh, we have felt that, at one point or another. So, so again, finding time to reflect on the teachings, on the Dharma, this I think really helps us prepare for the worst scenarios, right? Right? Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
But can you again ask your question? Yes.
How can oneself feel sometimes, you feel lost, or you feel miserable or hopeless, and sometimes you feel very lost, you don't know what you want to do in life. Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Oh, yes. I think one other way is to ask, is to find out why why one is feeling that way, because we all have felt this feeling. We have all experienced this feeling of sort of being lost, having no sense of direction. We have all felt that in one form or another, right? So then we have to, I think, uh, ask ourselves, what is it that we have to find? So this again, to make that very clear, what is it that I need, or know where, what is the goal, right? What is the purpose? What is the meaning? Because as soon as we say lost, then being lost means we are maybe not, we have lost our way, right? So then what is the way, right? And of course our way leads to somewhere. So then what is this way to which place, right? So to ask this, and then to have to sort of define, or more or less to have at least like some kind of what's the word, like a hint, or like a clue. I think even having something like, there are times when I know when I'm not absolutely sure of what I want, but I at least I have a clue, right? So it's like, uh, if I have to choose, like if I need to go to maybe cook food, and I may not know exactly what I'm looking for, but at least like, okay, I will go for Chinese food. And then when I'm in the restaurant, then I say, I will have something that is maybe not too soya based, but maybe actual vegetable. At least as long as I have those that clearly set in my mind, then it's then uh, then then I will order the right things. The right things will end up on the table. The chances are higher, right? But if I go to the restaurant without having any clue, then it's like 50-50. Either it could be very good, or the other part, right? So I think something like this, So sometimes, yes, we don't always have the answers, but even having like a hint, I think is sometimes very helpful, just so we know whether it's east or south or whatever, so we have a sense of direction. So I think like this, then we have to begin, and then uh, it becomes clear. It becomes once we find something like balance, once we find ground, then I think in time things will, I think, reveal. Things will reveal themselves. Yeah. So like this. It's very difficult. It's very difficult. But just simply making this progress, I think, is such an important part of being on the way, right? Just making that effort is perhaps that is the way, Just making that effort, just simply making the effort, and not just simply getting lost, but having a sense of direction and making that effort. Yes, that is wonderful. So thank you. So I think now maybe one last question.
Rinpoche, very nice meeting you.
Oh,
My question is, I think be it happy moment or angry moment, given time it will fade away. Given times it will fade away.
oh yes.
But our problem is like we tend to jump into it very fast. So how will you handle it to make yourself easier to overcome unhappiness, or over happy also not so good?
Yes.
So how do you handle that? I mean, do you have a secret recipe? Actually, your answer was quite. In fact, your answer come out even before I asked the question. You talk about consciousness, to be aware of the situation. But then, can it be more layman, to help us to understand clearer?
Excuse me. Can
it be make it even more simple?
Oh, I see.
To let us to more relate to.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see. In the context of finding.
Of, let's say.
Uh-huh.
What my question is, let's say, be it happy moment or angry moment.
Yes.
Given time, it will fade away.
Yes.
But then the problem with us is a lot of time we jump and clinch to it very fast. So how are we going to handle these sort of situations?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I think your question was, sometimes we hold on to things.
We jump to it too fast.
We
react
fast.
to it too fast.
React to it fast.
Yeah.
So yes, the happy moments and maybe the sad or the unpleasant moments and the pleasant moments, they naturally fade away.
Correct.
This is clear. So then, what was the then part?
What I'm saying is that my problem is always like, I will cringe to it. I will jump into it too fast.
Jump into
that
it.
Means respond to, let's say, angry.
Oh, I see. Right.
Or respond to happy too fast.
Okay.
So what will be the suggestion to handle this?
Yes.
Because you mentioned about consciousness. Yes, but then can it be more detailed?
Yes. So, for example, in the case of like resentment, anger, then like in our studies, then it mentions about first like to contemplate like the negative side of that, right, and the consequence of anger, right. So to truly understand that is I think it's helpful, right, to at least even sort of going through the various sort of playing out all these various scenarios beforehand. It helps. And then again, in the case of, let's say, anger, I remember once we were having a similar discussion, and then one person said that as soon as a person becomes angry, the first victim is the person himself or herself, right? Whoever is in a state of anger is the number one victim, is the first victim. So this is helpful, like in, I think, not reaching up to that point, one of this one extreme, right? And then, so like this, I think. But your question was not about anger. I'm sorry. It was about the happy moments and the unhappy moments. The clinching.
How you react to it too fast?
React to it so fast when
How to slow it down with me?
how to slow what
I was
down?
trying to say he gets triggered very easily. So let's say you say something and I just react just quickly and I'll snap at you.
Oh,
Or whatever. Yeah. So that's what he doesn't want to do.
No, he wants to do that, but he doesn't want to let go. He realizes that moment will end. I just said that. Let's slow down.
so here now I can see you are the root text, and there are some commentaries. Yes.
What I'm saying is that
Yes.
if let's say we don't react to anything, given time you'll fade away, be it happy moment or angry moment.
Yes.
But one of the problem that we have is that we jump into it very fast. If let's say we are not trained,
So
how
jump meaning like
react to it?
react to it like negatively, right?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
or positively, because over happiness also can be a problem.
Mm, mm. Oh, okay. So can I interpret? Did I understand correctly that when I will use myself. When I get angry, sometimes I just over magnify my anger, but at other times when I'm happy, then I make it too happy.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Okay. So that's a very good point. Okay. So with something like happy or unhappy mental states, you're right. They are just they come and then they pass, right? They are impermanent mental states. But then for I think most of us, then it's not just these two mental states, the coming and then the fading quickly part. We that is only so short, right? But then we sometimes then overcomplicate matters, right? We overcomplicate matters, and then and this is by I think not letting go, right? not letting go of our happy state or our unhappy state. We hold on to it. Yes, yes.
So that is the problem. So
Yes.
that means you're deviated from that.
Yes, yes. So I think yesterday, I think we were talking about some things. I think compassion, right? And then like being in compassion, but do not make compassion the object, right? So something like, okay, when I get angry, if I simply let myself experience anger, it goes away, right? But it is after the going part, then I hold on to all the reasonings that are associated with what got me in that angry state in the first place, and then I focus on that, right? And then I come out with all these reasonings, and that sort of then I'm not really, in a way, I'm not in that state anymore, but in a way I'm still in the same state. I'm stuck in anger, right? So then how do I get away from that, right? Yes, yes. I have to tell you, I do have anger issues. like you, plural, like you, I also have my anger issues, my attachment issues, and my ignorance issues, right? Ignorance issues. So maybe I'm not the best person to ask for guidance. We have a saying in Tibetan, like from one empty vase to another empty vase, you know? Yeah, but I think for me, sometimes the first thing is avoiding, you know? That is helpful. I find that helpful. But then that is not like a good solution, not at all, because then it's just like, it's almost like, because now I'm not thinking about the object of my anger, therefore there is no need for this anger to rise, right? But as soon as I think about the person, then I'm still holding on to that grudge, that anger, right? To get out of that, then sometimes I feel I try to apply antidote. I try to sort of really think about these situations which would just bring more anger. Of course, that's not helpful, right? So then the best thing is, I think, to just think about the antidote, you know, which is compassion, right? And then it is, of course, hard to, at first, to practice equanimity using this model, using the object of my anger. But then, just as it is stated in the practice, then applying it like that, you know, working with my anger like that, I think that is better. Yeah. Yeah. I've, of course, anger issues, but I've never had to sort of deal with this so much. Maybe it is as a result of, I think, simply turning a blind eye, right? Blind eye, just like sort of ignoring the person. I think that's what I've been doing mostly. That's why I've not been really following the Lamrim guidelines this way, So I've somehow I've found my own way of dealing with my issues. Yes, yes. So because if I go into that, then it's difficult, really. It's very difficult. So simply, also what I find useful is when we have anger, when I have anger for someone, if I think about this, then it comes from my insecurity, right? So then what I find helpful is when I sort of reaffirm, when I tell myself that this person cannot really harm me. This, for me, is more helpful, For me, applying the four immeasurables and then going through all these other things, I'm not on that level yet, Sorry. So then simply I try to, I think, have this almost like a false confidence, false confidence that this person can do only so much in harming me, in bringing fear, right? Then somehow this brings like a false sense of courage in me. Yes, not real courage, but a false sense of courage. And this false sense of courage, it helps me, I think, deal with my issues. Yeah. Excuse me? You're right. Yeah. Yes. Oh, it's almost 10 o'clock. No, I'm sorry. Now, it's very easy for me. I just have to go a few steps and I'm in my room. But you, on the other hand, then it's a different story, right? So thank you all so very much for your interest, for your dedication, and of course thank you for also your questions and for sharing, and then of course some of also those from last night. Thank you for sharing and. Thank you for the questions. This is, I think, really wonderful. Having this not only questions, but then also sharing, This, I think, then for me, I find this very, it's a learning process for me, I feel that I can learn a lot without really opening the scriptures, because I'm not like a bookworm, right? So I'm not a bookworm. So when you share your stories and when you put them, either when you share in the forms of stories or in a question form, for me this is very enlightening. So thank you, and yes, yeah.